There are people no one claps for, no spotlight, no cheering, no one asking how they're really doing. They're the ones who wake up tired, not just physically, but deep in their bones and still get out of bed. It's the ones who carry heavy thoughts in silence, because explaining them feels harder than enduring them. Maybe that's you. You don't complain much. You don't post about your struggles. You don't announce how close you are to giving up. You just keep going. And some days that hurts more than failing ever could. You watch others talk about motivation like it's loud and fiery, like strength means shouting, it's hustling, proving something to the world. But your strength doesn't look like that. Your strength looks like showing up when no one is watching. It's like continuing even when you feel invisible. It's like holding yourself together while everything inside you feels like it's quietly falling apart. You've learned how to smile while drowning, how to say I'm fine when you're not, how to survive storms without making a sound. And maybe tonight, you're exhausted, not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long without rest, without recognition, without relief. This isn't a video for the loud fighters. This is for the quiet ones, the ones who endure, the ones who carry storms silently, the ones who keep moving forward, not because they feel powerful, but because stopping feels even more terrifying. If you're here, listening, breathing through another hard day, you are not invisible. And your story isn't small. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're not strong. Let's talk about why people like you feel this tired. It's why it's not a personal failure. The truth is, most people don't lose motivation overnight. It fades slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're running on empty. For the quiet ones, it often starts with responsibility. You became the reliable one, the strong one, the one who doesn't fall apart. So when life gets heavy, you don't ask for help. You adjust. You adapt. Bills don't pause because you're tired. Family expectations don't disappear because you're overwhelmed. Life keeps asking, can you handle a little more? And you keep answering yes, because you always have. But here's what no one talks about. When you suppress exhaustion long enough, your mind doesn't scream, it shuts down. You don't feel inspired anymore. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because your nervous system has been in survival mode for too long. You wake up and feel flat, not sad enough to cry, not hopeful enough to dream, just numb. Maybe you scroll your phone at night, not for pleasure, but to avoid your thoughts. Maybe you start things, but never finish them, not from lack of care, but from lack of energy. Maybe you tell yourself, I'll rest later, but later never comes, and comparison makes it worse. You see people who seem to move faster, louder, with more confidence. They talk about grind and purpose and passion, while you're just trying to get through the day without collapsing. So you start thinking something is wrong with you. But the problem isn't that you're broken. The problem is that you've been strong in silence for too long. And silence doesn't mean absence of pain. It just means no one noticed. Quiet people often don't lose motivation because they stop caring. They lose it because they care too deeply, for too long, without support. And when care turns into constant pressure, even the strongest hearts get tired. But tired doesn't mean finished. And silence doesn't mean weakness. There's another way forward, not louder, not harder, just truer. Let's talk about that. Here's something the world rarely tells quiet people. You don't need to become louder to become stronger. You don't need to burn brighter to prove your worth. You need permission to move differently. Strength doesn't always look like pushing harder. Sometimes it looks like choosing one small, honest step instead of forcing a big one. Instead of asking, how do I fix my whole life? Ask, what's the next kind thing I can do for myself today? Maybe that means getting enough sleep, not as a reward, but as a requirement. Maybe it means saying no once, even if your voice shakes. Maybe it means finishing one small task and letting that be enough for today. Quiet people often wait until they feel motivated to act. But motivation doesn't come to those who are drained. It comes after movement. Not dramatic movement, gentle movement. A walk when your mind feels heavy. Writing one honest sentence instead of planning your entire future. Drinking water. Taking a breath. Turning down the noise. Another truth. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you that survived. Just because you endured something doesn't mean you have to keep living inside it. Habits you built to survive the storm don't all need to follow you into calmer days. And here's the hardest part for quiet people to accept. You don't have to suffer silently to be worthy of rest. But rest is not quitting. Slowing down is not failure. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. You don't need to prove your pain for it to be real. You don't need permission from the world to take care of yourself. The new direction isn't louder confidence or endless discipline. It's learning to listen to the quiet signals inside you, the ones you've ignored for years. The same quiet strength that kept you alive can now guide you toward healing. Let me tell you a story about someone who learned this the hard way. There was a man named Elias. Most people described him as calm, dependable, the kind of person you could count on. What they didn't see was how heavy his days felt. Elias worked, came home, handled his responsibilities, and repeated the cycle. He didn't hate his life, but he didn't feel alive in it either. Dreams he once had were quietly placed on a shelf, just for now, until years passed and dust settled on them. When things went wrong, he didn't panic, he adjusted. When people needed help, he showed up. When he was hurting, he stayed silent. One night, after another long day, he sat alone in his car and realized something terrifying. If his life stayed exactly like this forever, he wouldn't fight it. Not because he wanted to disappear, but because he was too tired to imagine something better that scared him. It's not enough to change everything at once, just enough to do one small, quiet thing differently. The next morning, instead of rushing, he sat still for 5 minutes. No phone, no noise, just breathing. It felt pointless. But it was the first moment in years where he wasn't performing strength. Over time, those small moments grew. He started walking in the evenings, not to exercise, but to think. He wrote down thoughts he had buried. He said no to things that drained him, even when guilt followed. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden success. No big announcement. But something shifted. He stopped living only to endure. Months later, someone asked him, "What changed? You seem different." Elias thought about it and said, "I stopped trying to be strong the way everyone expected, and started being honest with myself." He didn't become louder. He didn't become fearless. He became real, and that was enough to bring him back to life. The storm didn't end, but he learned how to stand inside it without disappearing. Quietly, steadily, strong in a way that didn't need witnesses. And that brings us to you. If you've made it this far, let me say this clearly. The fact that you are still here, still trying, still breathing, still listening, is not an accident. You are not weak because you're tired. You are tired because you've been strong in ways no one applauds. The world celebrates noise. But history is carried forward by quiet persistence. By people who keep going without guarantees. By those who endure storms without needing to be seen. You don't need to harden your heart to survive. You don't need to become someone else to be enough. You're allowed to move slowly. You're allowed to heal quietly. You're allowed to choose yourself even if no one notices at first. And one day you'll look back and realize something powerful. The storm didn't make you loud. It made you deep. It made you steady. It made you unbreakable in ways only the quiet understand. So if this video spoke to you, save it. Not for motivation, but as a reminder that even in silence, you kept going. And that makes you stronger than you think.